everybody. Welcome to Virtual Parenting Academy. My name is J.R. Reynolds, and I live here in the Battle Creek community. Went to Central, go Bearcats. The topic today is going to be on raising kids. I've got 4 children, 2 adults and 2 young ones. I've got a young boy that's 6 years old, and I have a young girl, and she's 8 years old. So those are the ones that I'll be primarily focusing on. I'll also be doing a little bit of talking about differences between raising boys and girls. But my primary focus today will be on how I'm raising my kids and certain things to think about. One of the things I do want to point out is that every parent is different. So what you're going to be getting from me might be different from the next person that you talk to. So I'll be providing some perspective from my experiences of raising kids. And hopefully through that, you'll be able to grab things that you think might work for you. If there's things that I talk about that don't work for you because of the way that you want to raise your kids, then by all means, stick to the way that you're raising your kids. But I just want to offer some different perspectives, and hopefully you'll get some nuggets that you'll be able to polish into things that you can call your own. I want you to also understand that, and I sort of alluded to this before, but everybody's got their own God-given talents. So keep that in mind as you raise your kids. You've got your own talents and you have your own experiences. I was raised a certain way, therefore I see things a certain way. And after that, I go and raise my kids in a certain way. So that's going to apply to you as well. Those are some things that I want you to keep in mind as you listen to the things that I have to say today. I'm going to be a couple of housekeeping things. I've got a drink over here that I'll be drinking from, and then over my shoulder here I have a timer that helps me to see where I am with my timing. So when I'm looking over there, that's what I'm going to be doing. I want to start out by reading this. I want to get it right. But if you open your mind, you can learn as much from your kids as they can learn from you. So I've got to say that over the course of raising 4 kids, particularly these younger kids, because I'm older now and I have more wisdom or patience or whatever you want to call it, but I'm learning a lot about myself through observing the kids, but also through my experiences in trying to raise them the best that I can. So keep that in mind. If you look at this as a journey, and not looking for the final destination like I've raised my kids, you'll find that there's a lot of growth that can be had for you as well as the kids as you're raising them. So I want to start off by saying that boys and girls are different. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Yes, there are lots and lots and lots of similarities, but there are lots and lots of differences between raising boys and raising girls. At the same time, there are lots of different boys, and the way that they grow up, they're different. The same thing applies to girls. There are lots of different girls and the way that they show up. So those are some key points to keep in mind, because when it comes to raising kids, I'm sure those of you who have kids already know that one way of raising kids for one kid is not going to work the same way for another kid, by virtue of the fact that they are distinct individuals and they have their own ways of being. So that's important to learn. Don't be too quick to label your children. Nothing can erode and take away from a person's self-conscious or self-confidence faster than trying to put your kids in a box. You put them in a box, then they begin to believe that that is the only way that they can exist, and that's the only way that they can move through life. So limiting your kids is something that you need to pay attention to and try to avoid if possible. I've been guilty of that, but it takes having an open mind and constantly assessing where you are with your kids and assessing where your kids are as they're growing up. Help them to celebrate their own uniqueness. A lot of times kids grow up, and especially boys, we've been trained to to be a certain way as a boy growing up into manhood. And a lot of times that again puts you into a box, particularly if you are not meant to be in that box. Remember at the top I said that there are a lot of different ways that you can raise kids, and that there are a lot of kids that are very different from one another within their own gender. So boys are can be all kinds of different ways, and so trying to fit them into that one box is going to be probably not in their best interest. Now I'd like to talk about something that's fun for me, something that I'm good at, something that I love and enjoy doing, and that's playing. It's very, very, very important to play with your kids and to allow them to play. We talk about differences between boys and girls, and so when I do talk about these things, please bear in mind that there are going to be a lot of generalities that I'm going to call on as a way of explaining how I've raised my kids or how kids are out there in the world. So just keep that in mind, that I'm not trying to stereotype, but I'm just talking about experiences that I've had from my kids, and you should do the same with yours. So then with that said, I've noticed with my boys in raising them that they are action oriented. That is, when they play, they like to roughhouse, they like to play hard, they like to interact in ways that are very, very physical. That seems to be the case also for my daughters when they were younger. And I'm talking about like 2 or 3, but once they hit 4 and 5, then they started changing in some ways as it relates to their methods of playing. They seem to prefer a lot of interaction that is through dialogue or through understanding and role playing with each other. That's not to say that boys don't do the same. My son, he loves to role play too, except that the things and the roles that he wants to play are different from my young daughters. So that's important to keep in mind. One of the tips I want to give you guys as it relates to the kids is if you do play with them, and again I encourage you to play with them as much as possible, because then you get to know them, you get to know yourself as well. But learn to love playing with dolls for girls and for boys. With boys, you'd want to call them action figures, but sometimes they want to play with Barbies or what other female dolls, brats. They want to play with them. But I notice with my son, he prefers the action figures. I'm thinking Avengers. I'm thinking Pokemon, those characters. He loves to interact with them. He seems to always want to go and do battle with them, to wrestle or to fight. And believe me, I have and my co-parent have raised our son not to buy into all of that, the heavy-duty violence that goes on television and out in the world. But what has happened, despite our best efforts, is that he seems to be predisposed to, when he's got his action figures, or frankly when he's playing with me, to want to wrestle, to want to do battle with them. So when you do play with them, just know that that's going to be what you get, or that's what I got with my son. And with my daughter, it was less about play than in action sorts of ways than it is through having conversation, dialogue, pretending that you're in a household setting and going about daily activities within a household. My daughter loves horses, so she's got these toy horses, and she's got action figures that can ride the horses, or dolls that are not part of the horses, but she'll want to interact with the horses and the dolls in a way that shows that she is thinking about how horses might act and behave and interact with people. So that's something that you gotta to bear in mind, is that there's different ways of playing. I have my own personal ways of things that I like to do when I play. that entails like riding bikes. So, the kids will love to ride bikes with me. But in return, what I've got to do is play with them on the level that they want to play and do the games that, or the forms of play that they want to do. I said to play with them as much as possible. I'm an older parent. I'm also a single parent. So at the end of the day, when I'm done with work, I'm usually exhausted and don't want to, and the last thing I want to do is get down on the floor at my age and wrestle with my son or be on my hands and knees crawling around with my daughter as she plays with her horses. But if indeed, or in fact, you are able to do those things, I encourage you to get down there and roughhouse with your son, sit and play house with your daughter. Do those things that let them know that you are taking an interest in the things that are important to them or the things that are fun for them. Video games. So like both of my kids, I've allowed them to have screens in the last year or so. And so I've been like hesitating because I knew that they were going to be all in when it came to these video games. And I was absolutely right. They love to play on their screens. Although I do notice that my daughter prefers to watch how-to videos, how to decorate, how to do your nails, how to do makeup, how to do collages. So she's a how-to person. Not to say that she doesn't play those games, but compared to my son, he's all in with these games, and they're usually competitive sorts of games. So there's battling games, there's other kinds of action games, and there's also the games where you're racing. So that's what my son likes. My daughter likes them also, but just not to the extent that he does. She also likes competitive games, but she will quickly go or go to something else in a way that my son doesn't. So I don't discourage my son from playing these games. I just limit the time that he is on those games because there's other things that they can do in the form of play. There's something that's hypnotic or brain altering when it comes to games. I'm not a scientist in that area, but I just know that it's addictive. And a strange thing that I found with my kids is when they are not playing the games, when I say shut down the screens, they don't skip a beat. They go on to other things. They got plenty of toys. I'm looking at 3 bins behind you. And they're large bins. They'll pick out toys and they'll play, when they're down here in the basement. They have stuff upstairs as well that they play with. So that's what I want to say about the games. I also want to talk a little bit about not just those kinds of games, but board games as well. I've got an assortment of board games with them. And one of the things that I just want to leave you with, whatever board games you want to play with your kids, is up to you. I play checkers with them. I taught them how to play chess last year. Believe it or not, they picked it up really quick. At least the rules, the strategies, they still have a long ways to go as it relates to that. But they're coming along. Cards, they love to play 21. It's a counting, blackjack, you go to 21. So they've learned how to count. It's kind of a learning game for them. And that's another thing I want to point out when it comes to playing. Playing is an opportunity for them to learn to learn. And so when I'm playing games with them, Monopoly, I've taught them Monopoly, checkers, chess, card games, war. The thing is, for me, it's always be teaching. But when I say that, I want you to keep in mind, at their age, 6 and 8 years old, the most important thing about playing with them is to have fun. Yeah, I want them to learn. I want them to learn the rules of the game. But when we actually start playing the game, I back away from trying to keep them within the rules. Games like Monopoly or checkers or tic-tac-toe. I let them set their own rules when they want to play because the object of play is to have fun. They get a lot of rules when they're in school. I give them a lot of rules and boundaries actually here in the home as well. So I'm not so concerned about rules when I'm playing games with the kids as much as making sure that they are laughing and having fun and interacting with me and any other grown-ups that are involved in it in ways that let them have fun. In later years, like I said, then the rules become more important. I also would like to discuss a concept, the roughhousing. I talked about the roughhousing, and boys love to roughhouse. Not all boys do, not all girls do, but there are boys and girls that like roughhousing, and so I like to distinguish a difference between playing roughhousing and just hard playing. With roughhousing, sometimes things can get out of control, and then there's a problem with the kids actually hurting each other. I draw the line with that. But when it comes to just regular roughhousing, wrestling, I allow that. I participate in that because it helps them to get understanding of their physical bodies and how they interact with their bodies in terms of other people. So if they're wrestling and they're having fun, it's great and it's fine. The one thing that I don't want to do is allow them to just go too far, because even like teenagers, it's the same thing. I remember even in college, when I was in college, with my fraternity brothers, I used to like to wrestle with them. We used to like to shadow box and everything. But there comes a point in time when you have to understand that you're right at that point when things are going to turn serious, and you get clipped by chance or shoved in a way that hurts, then it turns into something. So I allow my kids to play, but what I don't allow to happen is for them to roughhouse to the point where there's going to be the kind of physical contact that turns into actual fighting and violence. So there's a big difference there. So I don't see it as a behavioral issue. Roughhousing, like I said, playing hard helps them to burn off a lot of energy. That helps me as a parent when I'm tired, and I don't feel like playing with them. If my kids want to roughhouse with each other, fine, or do things. But it helps them to burn off energy so that when it's time to go down for the night, to go to bed, they're tired. And that's like one of the secrets that I sort of keep in my head is to, what have I done with them, or what have I allowed them to do that is active and that burns up the energy, so that when it's time to wind down for bed, it's a little bit easier than when they're sitting around just like playing on screens, because you're not burning a lot of energy in that way. This brings us to emotions and the emotional expressions that boys and girls have. Contrary to popular belief, males have just as many emotions, and given their druthers would like to express their emotions just as much as girls do and women do. So I have as many emotions as a man, as an adult man, as an adult woman does. The difference is that I have been conditioned and programmed since birth and childhood to tamp down those emotions and not express them. That's led to things in me that don't work so well when I'm out there socializing. And I've been working on this over the years, and getting better at expressing my emotions and letting people know how I feel. I know that in many situations, it's not the best thing to do to express those emotions, but the good thing that you need to be doing is being aware of what those emotions are in the moment. I'm talking about as an adult. Now, take all of those things and then apply them to kids when they're growing up. The way that I raise my kids is I encourage them to express their emotions. I try hard to give them language for expressing their emotions rather than just acting out on those emotions. Or if I see them acting out on those emotions, I try to ask them to self-identify what they are feeling. Ask a person how they're feeling and what emotions come up, and typically they talk about what they're doing and how it affects them, but they don't really talk about what that emotion is. So what I'm talking about is when you're mad, or when your child is mad, ask them what they're feeling, and if they don't say that they're angry, ask them, are you angry? And then teach them when you're angry to say that you're angry. When you're happy, say that you're happy. When you're frustrated, say that you're frustrated. So they begin to understand, associate the words with their actions. And that goes a long way in helping them to self-regulate those emotions when you feel like they're getting out of balance with whatever the emotions are. I also want to talk a little bit about boys and crying. A lot of parents, and this was, I can't really say now how my folks treated me with this, but I know that, because I can't remember, but I noticed that a lot when I was a kid. I didn't do a whole lot of crying, and that was the same with a lot of my friends around me, a lot of my boy friends around me. And what I'd like to suggest and offer to you is that crying is a good thing. I've learned as an elderly adult that crying oftentimes is the best way for me de-escalating the stress that might be inside me. There's appropriate ways and times to do that. You don't want to do it when you're in a moment where the crying might not necessarily be in your best interest. But when you're a kid, it's a little bit different. Especially as a younger kid, there's things that are going on in their lives, and look at crying as a relief valve. Look at yelling as a relief valve. The trick is to make sure that when they are crying, make sure that it's not a play on your own emotions. In other words, you don't want them playing you to get their way by crying or acting and behaving in a way that is contrary to what's in their best interests. So I allow my kids to cry, but to a limit. And it's a judgment call for me. A lot of women that I've been around, they kind of check me when they see that I'm telling my kids it's time to stop crying. Particularly if they hurt themselves, I try to gauge, just how much hurt they have in them. I try to let them get it out, but then when I feel like they're doing it for effect, then I shut it down. I ask them, I say, okay, you're better now. It's time to, move on. It's time to go, to stop crying or whatever. Figure out a very nice and pleasing way to transition from the crying moments to getting back to a normal state where they're centered. And then talk about whatever the injury is, whether it's emotional injury or physical injury, or a mental injury that's causing them to be to want to cry or to be angry. It's the same thing. But bear in mind that I'm raising my kids, especially my boys, to know that it's okay to cry when you're hurting, but to begin to learn how to self-regulate. And that comes with maturity and age. So another couple of things as it relates to fears, which is associated with emotions, is to watch very carefully the language that you transmit to them when they are afraid. One of the things that I do when they are afraid is to acknowledge that they're afraid. I don't tell them you don't need to be afraid of that. Why are you afraid of that? It's particularly my son. I don't tell him when he's afraid of something to just man up and don't be afraid. That boy has not been in this world long enough to understand why he is feeling the way that he's feeling, and to just say shut down your feelings. He never has a chance to process the why he's afraid or the why he is angry, because daddy is too busy telling him not to feel those feelings, not to be afraid or not to be angry or to just get over it. Those are contrary, or those are things that are counterproductive to their emotional development. And what you're trying to do with your kids is to, in all things, is to help them to learn how to self-regulate. But there's a difference between telling somebody, your kid, to shut down immediately when they start showing those extreme emotions, and then helping them through those emotions through, using their words or their language or other means of expressing how they're feeling or behaving in the moment. Another emotion that I want to get to is one of my favorite emotions, and that's love. A lot of times I feel like we don't show our kids enough love. And when I say that, there are different language, and some folks know this as it relates to adults, because when you're with your partners, you know how you need things done in order for you to know that that person cares about you. So it's called a love language. And so affection can be transmitted and received in different ways. And with boys and with girls, it's the same way. And even among boys, the love language that they want to receive or that they demonstrate towards you is different. I can't tell you how many families that I've known, or people that I know, adult people that say that they never heard their dad tell them that they love them. And they said that some of them said that they wish that their parent would have told them that. So as it relates to love and kids, I invite you to think about what your love language might be in terms of how you want to receive love from your kids, but more importantly, how they want to receive love from you. So for some boys or girls, that love language might consist of lots and lots of loves or hugs and kisses. I personally prescribe to kissing and hugging my kids as much as possible because I find that the physical intimacy, and when I use the word intimacy, that means just personal contact between one person and another. I'm not talking about the sexual intimacy and the language that you use when you're talking about being intimate with a boyfriend or girlfriend partner or a husband and wife partner. I'm talking about the quiet moments that you have between you and your kids, and sometimes maybe they're not quiet. It might just be some roughhousing, but it's a form of physical contact that lets them know that you're vibing with them, that you relate to them, that you care for them. So lots of hugs and kisses are things that I like to do. My son, he loves to wrestle. So when I'm walking around the house, I got to always keep a center of balance when I'm moving around the house, because my son is liable to blindside me at any moment and try to tackle me as a way of showing me that he loves me. So that's not so much, it doesn't happen so much with my daughter. She's 8. My son at 6 years old now, he still loves that physical contact. And I've sensed that for him is a form of love. He loves to do like sword battles or lightsaber, Star Wars battles. And I'm understanding that that's his form of intimacy and love. It's showing him that I care when I do that sword fighting with him and then wrestle and play. Honest praise. I make sure that when my kids do something, whether it's quality work or less than quality work, like if it relates to art or building something or playing a video game or riding his bike or her bike, I let them know that I am appreciating the effort that they're doing in whatever it is that they're trying to do. It might be the worst piece of art that I've ever seen, but they'll never know that. I'll tell them that's a great job. And instead of being critical about the job that they did in whatever it is, I just start asking them questions about it. What were you going for when you did this? Or seems like you might have needed to do a little bit more or a little bit less of this. So what was your thinking when you did it this way? Those kinds of questions can help a lot to build trust in your relationship with them. A simple good job is nice, but if you can just take that extra step of of asking questions about, what it is that they did, why they did it, what was the approach that they took in doing it. I think that that'll go a long way in being helpful for them. Now then, I'd also like, in my final moments, I'd like to talk about a couple more things. And one of them is that it's natural for younger siblings to copy off of each other. When I was a kid, and my daughter, when I was an older kid and my sister was younger, she used to copy everything that I did. She used to always want to do everything that I did. And the same is true in my household now with my kids. So my younger son is always copying what my daughter, his older sister, who is 8, he's 6, she's 8, whatever she's doing, he wants to do it. And I allowed that. I let them be brother and sister. I let them be friends. I let them be individuals. Sometimes, though, I have to confess, I kind of cringe when I see my son wanting to copy off of his older daughter. And that is in the realm of things that girls like to do compared to what I like to do as a man or as a male. Like my daughter, she likes to play, have her press on nails or get fingernail polish done. So sometimes my son wants to, he'll come back from his mom's house and he'll have his nails painted. In the beginning, it was something that just really irked me until I went to the doctor one day and he had his fingernail polish on when we were seeing the doctor, and the doctor just looked at my son while he was examining for something else and said, "You must have an older sister." And my son said, "Yeah," and I nodded as well. But in that moment, something went off in my head, and I was like, "Dang!" So my son is not interpreting what my daughter or his older sister is doing in any kind of gender sort of way. He's just trying to copy off of what his daughter is doing. So yes, I go ahead and let him get his nails painted whenever he wants to. That's going to be a judgment call for you, because I realize everybody has, some people have strong feelings about that. I would only encourage you to ask this question when your son, or your daughter for that matter, because it works both ways. Sometimes my daughter does things that are more stereotypic of what boys do. But what I ask myself, in those moments when I'm feeling a certain way about what they're doing or what they're saying, I'm asking myself, am I feeling this way because of things that I have inside of me and how I feel about it, or am I correcting them or feeling a certain way because of what it is that they're doing? So that's the thing. Is it about me or is it about them? A lot of times you'll find that when you get annoyed about something that your kid is doing, it's more about you and maybe how you grew up or experiences that you had as a kid, as opposed to what's going on in the moment with that kid. Because I guarantee you, what's going on at somebody that's 5, 4, 5, 6 years old is going to change over time, and it's going to flip-flop back and forth, and soon they're going to find their own rhythm. They're going to have their own stride, and the things that they're doing is not going to be there once they're an adult. And if they are, hey, it's your kid, and they are expressing themselves how they want to be expressed. And so it's a complicated issue, but it is something that I did want to bring up. Another thing that I wanted to bring up, because I'm running out of time here, is it's about encouraging your kids to learn. I do it 24/7, and there's different ways to learn. You learn by listening, you can learn by watching, you can learn by doing. I do all of those things when it comes to my kids, but what I have to do and pay a lot of attention to is what method of learning works best for them. Like for my son, he's action oriented, so he wants to do by actually participating in the activity. It's the same way for my daughter as well. They learn by participating. Learning by listening is helpful, but only to a point. But actually having them dive in to do the work or to do whatever the lesson is the best way for my kids to learn. Don't avoid hard conversations when you're when it's time for them to come up. If you're not talking to your kids about things that are hard, I'm talking about concepts that are out there, like why that person acts this way, or why that person behaves this way, or why you do things this way. If you're not having those hard conversations, then they are not learning your perspective. It goes a lot further when you talk to your kids about why you want your kids to do things a certain way, or why somebody over there is doing something in a way that you prefer them not to do. It's not very helpful for them in their learning to say, well, just don't do it, or because I said don't do it. Now, that's not to say don't use those words, because I use them. Actually, I use them a lot, because my kids, they're quickly turning into why kinds of kids, which means that they ask why all the time about things. And sometimes it's inappropriate for them to be asking, especially when I'm correcting them in public, to stop doing a thing. And they turn around and ask me to, why can't I stay longer, out with my friend, playing with them. So I have to come up with reasons to let them know in ways in public that are different than because I said so. Usually what I do is I tell them, ask them to come here. And then when they're with me, I say, shut it down now. It's time to go. I'll talk to you about why we're doing this when we get, back home or get inside the house. So those are things that I encourage you to think about when you're teaching your kids and you're trying to help them to learn. What I do is I insist that they try new things at least once. So all kinds of sports, try them at least once. See if you like it. If you do like it, let's continue it. If you don't like it, then let's move on. Try foods. When we're out eating, I encourage them to try something more than just those chicken nuggets and fries that they always want to eat. Isaiah, my son, is now into eating burgers again, because when they were really little, they used to eat everything from sushi to chicken wings, to spicy pizza, all kinds of things. But the older they get, they fall into these patterns of what they like and don't like. Make sure that they are learning the things that they need to learn and exposing them to as many things as possible. Allow them to help you to cook. Allow them to help you to clean. But as you're doing it, be as specific as possible when you're instructing them, because they can pick up bad habits right away, or they can do something in a way that they think is a good way, but it might not be the best way for cleaning or for cooking. So always be there and supervise them as closely as possible while letting them go ahead and make the mistakes that they're going to make. Also, teach them about your family. That's critically important. I teach my kids about who they are, where they're from. My son is biracial. I talk to him about that. I talk to him about what it means to be an African American. I let the mom talk about, what it's like to be white. I do mention that in some respects, but I talk from what I know, and what I know best is being black, what it means to be black. And on that note, when issues about race come up, I talk to them about it. I don't wait. I don't ignore it. I talk to them about it. But here's the thing. When I'm talking to my 6 and 8-year-old kids about issues related to race, I have to talk to them about it in ways that a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old can understand. When I talk to my son about issues about discrimination, about what's going on out there in the world with policing, I work hard to talk about it in ways that are balanced, but also in ways that are very realistic and that he can understand for his age. It's not helpful for me to say, don't trust the police. If I'm going to say something like that, I have to talk about it in 6-year-old language to make him understand that there are things that are going on out in the world, and the things that you see on television, you might see out there in the world. But here's the thing about police, and then talk about all the good things that they do, but also talk about the fact that there are law enforcement out there that make bad choices. That's really a good way that I talk about good people and bad people out in the world, is that you make good choices and you make bad choices. And that's what kids understand, because when I lecture them about disciplining, I talk in forms of good choices and bad choices. I educate them as much as possible, age appropriately, about Black history. I don't avoid the topic about slavery. I talk about it, but I talk about it in ways, and there's lots of books out there that can help you, but I talk about slavery, what it meant to African Americans, how it affected white people as well, because not all white people were slave owners, but make sure that I include them when I'm making the discussion. I also look for opportunities to lift up my kids as it relates to being African American or African Americans in general. I do not sidestep all of the great things that African Americans have done and contributed to this country and to this family, the family that I belong to, the extended family that I belong to. There's so many negative stereotypes out there that I look for every single opportunity possible to lift up my kids as it relates to being African American. I do have certain things that I avoid, but it's only because they're not mature enough to understand the complexities that are associated with this this insidious thing that we call race and racism out there. I acknowledge and discuss differences among family members. He's got a sister that is white. So we talk about that. We talk about the differences. Talk about his being biracial. I talk about me being, how I identify as being Black and African American. Right now, I refer to him as a little Black boy. There may come a time when he wants to refer to himself as a biracial kid. When he gets to that age and starts wanting to use that language, then I'm going to have to adjust, because it is who he is, and he has experiences that I don't have, being that his mother is white. And when my son leaves me and goes to his white family, he's got to adjust to that. So that's a level of complexity that I have some understanding of, but he's actually experiencing it, going back and forth between a black household and a white household. So I've got to honor that. Because ignoring, and this is my final point here, ignoring racial issues, especially as it relates to African Americans, can lead to images of shame, feelings of guilt, and ultimately feelings of inferiority. If you avoid the topic, then it turns into something they internalize as something that I don't need to be talking about. And is it because you're ashamed of me because I'm Black, particularly as it relates to skin color? My son is lighter skinned, but he has really good friends that have dark complexions, and when you're dark complected, there's a whole nother set of issues and complexities that you have to deal with that go beyond the Black-white dynamic. There's issues within the African American community as it relates to darker skinned folks and lighter skinned folks, and hair texture as well. So I talk about all of those things. I never talk about bad hair, good hair, because that kind of language can be internalized, particularly if your kid has hair that's a certain texture, and you say that that person has bad hair or this person has good hair, then they compare their own hair to that. And you might be using bad hair in a way that's different from good and bad, but to say that what they're hearing is that bad is negative, bad is undesirable, good is desirable. So I'm very careful in what I say is bad and what I say in good, because what they do is immediately internalize it into themselves. So that's about what I have right today in terms of parenting. So I've enjoyed talking about this. And I encourage you to learn as much as you can about parenting from other parents, from single parents. I have the ultimate respect for single parents. I'm co-parenting with my ex and all of my exes, to tell you the truth, and the ones that I've had, I've fathered kids with, and I have good co-parenting relationships with them. It took a while, like when I first was in the separation stages, but I have evolved good parenting techniques and skills with my co-parent, and that makes all the difference in the world as it relates to raising my kids. So I encourage you, if you have a co-parent available or a partner that is willing to serve in that role, to take advantage of it. I also had the ultimate respect for single parents that don't have a co-parent. I don't know how y'all do it, to tell you the truth, but I just want to give you all the praise possible, because I get breaks because I have a co-parent, and my situation is I have them 2 days on, 2 days off, and then every other weekend. That's the thing that I do. There's different dynamics and there's different ways of doing that, a week on, a week off. So you find what works for you and then you use it. But to those parents that don't have that opportunity and that situation, I have maximum respect for you, because I know what kind of energy it takes in order to raise a kid as a co-parent. So as a single parent, I encourage you to find all the supports that you can. Seek out people that you can talk to and talk about issues related to parenting. If you don't have the answers, then go out and ask people, because that's what I do when I run into problems. So that's it. You guys take care, and good luck with your parenting. Bye.